Nurture and support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Nurture and Support, episode 158. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter.
And I'm Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter.
And we are here today to talk about Westworld, episode 4, Riddle of the Sphinx.
Yep. What did you think of this episode?
I liked this episode a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
Not to take notes on it, because when I take my notes, I try and do kind of line breaks on scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular episode created some difficulties there because we had timeline bouncing and scene bouncing and lots of things going on. But well acted, well written, character development. I very much enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I think this might be my favorite episode so far of the season, even though it was lacking in some of my favorite characters, but it was a really, really good episode. We got a lot of new information in this episode while still opening up a whole bunch of other mysteries about what's going on. But we did find out quite a lot in this episode, so it was pretty cool. And I got my notes. We have 14 different scenes in this episode for my notes.
It's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with this one.
Yep. It was a big episode. Yep. It was really, really cool. It was very heavy on one particular favorite character, the Man in Black.
Yes, absolutely. And it was really fun. So let's go ahead and get started. Maybe we'll try and bounce back and forth between. Well, we'll see how it goes we'll try and bounce back and forth between scenes. I'm happy to kind of start it off, and so in a very un-Westworld kind of environment is where we start. We've got a nice white vinyl playing "Play with Fire" from the Rolling Stones. It's a very fancy hipster apartment, and we're seeing a little bit of a slice of life of Jim Delos in this environment. For me, there were a couple slices I didn't need to see, but we got he rides an exercise bike, he listens to some music, he pours some coffee, he has some trouble getting cream into the coffee. There's a little bit of issue there, yes. But then young William shows up and begins to talk about a baseline interview. And as he's going through it, Delos is like, "Why are we doing this?" And William says, "Fidelity."
Yes. Yep. And there was one phrase that will keep coming up and recurring versions of this scene throughout this episode where Mr. Delos says, "If you aim to cheat the devil, you owe him an offering," which was a nice little quote that appeared many times. And I'd have to say that's probably my quote for this episode because it happens so many times and it's a nice little saying.
It is.
Yeah. So we cut from that scene to our favorite Man in Black with Lawrence. And they're riding up by some railroad workers, some hosts, railroad workers, who have apparently caught some guests and are using them as railroad ties to build the railroad. But we do find in this tiny little scene that the railroad is going the wrong direction from what the Man in Black says it's supposed to be going. So he says the tracks are supposed to be headed north, but they're headed west. So Ford has made a new little game within the game.
So I'm going to make a structural integrity argument at this point in time that if you are indeed building railroad tracks, a human body as a railroad tie seems highly inefficient to me and problematical.
Yes.
And so did you know absolutely? Because this was the one thing I wasn't 100% sure on were these hosts or guests that were serving as the railroad ties. So I'm assuming, did you get like clear clarification that my hunch is that they were guests? But
it was hard to tell. Many of them did appear to be in proper Westworld clothing, but I believe in one of the scenes there was a sobbing woman who appeared to be in normal clothing, not your Westworld type clothing.
Gotcha.
Is what put it off to me because I had that question initially as well, because the bodies did appear to be in traditional Westworld type garb, and so it was hard to say. But one of the background scenes, I think one of the women was in regular clothing, so I surmised from that they were killing the guests like a good host will.
Yes, during the rebellion seems very reasonable.
Yes.
So then we jump back to Zombie Clementine, dragging Bernard along the road, and takes him back to kind of a cave. And Bernard makes his way into the cave, and Elsie's back. So it's awesome. Another one of my favorite characters. We see her. She's been apparently locked up in this cave if we go way back into season 1.
Yeah, we haven't seen her in a very long time.
Bernard choked her out. We didn't know exactly what happened. Now we know. He kind of locked her up in this. It becomes, Elsie talks about, you left me here with protein bars in a bucket, which I will offer up might be a better name for Nurture and Support, or at a minimum, a great band name. So that's pretty awesome from there. And Bernard's starting to kind of glitch out a little bit. He's having cognitive lock. This is where Elsie discovers that Bernard's a host. She didn't realize that. And there are these kind of flashbacks that start to occur to some sort of lab and Bernard. And Bernard said, "Is this now?" So he seems to be much like Billy Pilgrim from Breakfast of Champions. Bernard's become a little bit unstuck in time, and he's kind of floating all over the place. And there's some sort of facility in this cave, Sector 12, which appears to be more of an A team. We saw an earlier sector. I don't know if it was 8 or not, but we saw a not such a good A team sector before. But this is Sector 12. This looks like a pretty good gig. But there's been a lot of carnage in this particular lab, and you're going to have to help me here because we're talking about these episodes and we've kind of watched other episodes, and so sometimes I get a little unstuck in time. But I believe this is the first time we got a really good look at these kind of funky white dudes. Another good podcast name, maybe. But
funky white dudes.
But these very
the drone. I think they're called drone hosts. That are in they're kind of a hallmark of the facilities that are not part of the normal running of Westworld. They are the real reason Westworld is there. I don't know if we have a name for those people yet, but the ulterior motive faction of the control system of Westworld, their facilities seem to be the ones that have these drone hosts in them who are doing all of the work. So we've got a bunch of dead techs on the floor and some drone hosts.
Pretty gruesome ways too.
Yeah. Yes, they were impaled with some of the equipment. Yeah. So Bernard did tell Elsie something that Elsie didn't know because, like we said, Elsie's been gone for a long time in that scene. He had to tell Elsie that Ford's dead because she wanted to go confront Ford, and he has to tell her that Ford's dead. So we're all that way, Elsie. We're all sad.
Yeah, we are.
So our next scene was a really short one, and I've already forgotten this lady's name.
I call her Raj Girl.
Raj Girl, okay. I was back to calling her Mystery Lady. I think last episode I did figure out her name, but I'm sorry, I got lazy and didn't go look it up. We're back to the Ghost Nation where she has been captured. And what's your name for the other guy?
Lesser Hemsworth.
Yes, Lesser Hemsworth.
It's actually Stubbs.
I remember that from
his name. So but I still like Lesser Hemsworth.
Yeah. So they both are tied up by the Ghost Nation folks. And something interesting that gets said is that apparently they are killing hosts, not guests. Ghost Nation. They're capturing the guests, but they're not killing the guests. So I believe it was Raj Lady who made that observation to him that they weren't killing the humans, they were just killing hosts. So.
Yeah, that was a confusing and interesting point. to kind of get across.
Yeah. So it was a really tiny scene. That was about all I got out of it.
Yep, those were my notes too.
Okay.
So we get back to our awesome man in black, and he's with his good buddy Lawrence, and they're back in Lawrence's hometown. It apparently they kind of get set up, and the bartender's kind of nervous, as he often is. And it turns out the Confederales are holding the whole town in the church, and they kind of pull them all into that space. Lawrence's family is there, his wife and his daughter.
Yeah.
Much like Warren Zevon's Lawyers, Guns, and Money, the Confederale, and what's his name? Do you remember?
Who?
The Confederale leader?
Craddock.
Craddock.
Yeah.
Craddock says, we need food, whiskey, and ammunition, which is like Lawyers, Guns, and Money to me. So there's interesting, so they're all in this church. Craddock's kind of holding court, drinking out of a chalice, kind of creating all kinds of problems there. And there's an awesome exchange between Lawrence and the man in black, where he goes, look, my daughter's here. You told me you had a daughter, which the man in black was kind of surprised he actually had shared with Lawrence at some point in time. And he goes, do you think your daughter would want to watch you gun down in front of her? And the man in black goes, probably.
Probably.
Which is awesome.
Hold that thought. We'll get to more on that subject later. But yeah, so go on.
So that's all I've got for this scene.
Okay. Well, I have for the last part of that scene that part of it, Lawrence was like, basically they're gonna kill us no matter what we do.
Yep.
And as soon as we tell them where the guns are, they're gonna kill us. And he tells the man in black where the guns are. So the man in black stands up and tells Craddock where the guns are.
After Craddock, let's make a deal. After Craddock has clearly indicated, I don't make deals.
Right. He stands up and they're going to make a deal because, of course, Craddock is still obsessed with glory as the whole symbolism of them doing all of this in the church and Craddock drinking out of the chalice and all of that. So that was a nice little touch of harkening back to the religious overtones of whatever Craddock's deal is with glory. So anyway, the man in black betrays Lawrence's trust yet again.
Instantly.
Yes. He didn't pause. No thought there. So our next scene goes back to Old Man Delos, or Papa Delos, and he's going basically a rehash of the previous scene, the opening scene of this episode, with him going through essentially the very same activities he was doing before, only they did thankfully leave a few of those out. But we do go back to the Creamer being poured into the coffee, about how steady his hands are. So this is apparently a thing. William comes in again. William looks much the same. It's still young William, but he does look a little bit older. And they start having the same conversation again, talking about the same questions, again asking, what is it about? And he's about, it's fidelity. And I believe this is the one where he hands him the envelope. And Delos asks him how long it's been since basically he died. And it's been 7 years since he died. His wife is dead. And let's see. That was about it. He starts glitching out after this conversation. And as William leaves the apartment, we see that it's one of the traditional Westworld rooms where a host is inside surrounded by technicians on the outside. Mr. Delos just can't see out, and they terminate him.
Yeah, definitely terminate him in a pretty big way. Freeze him. They freeze him, and then they just burn the whole thing up, which it seems to me a little wasteful that you've got to kind of rebuild all the furniture apartment and all the stuff that's going on there versus maybe you just need to clear the host out, but they just kind of burn it all down. And I guess, I don't know, maybe that's the thing, but yeah, it was kind of a repeat of the previous episode, and he's definitely buggy. He starts off good, but then things kind of go a little bit south.
Yeah, I don't know if they said, I didn't make a note of it in that particular scene, if they had noted how long that particular version had made it, but that is something that's going to come up later.
So then I have a super short scene to talk about next. which is we kind of go back to Lawrence and the man in black, and the bartender's head, he's been a little shaky pouring the drinks, and Craddock's not digging it, and so he goes, let's see how you can do. So he pours a shot, puts it on the back of his hand, and asks him to walk 12 paces out, which actually the bartender, highly concentrating, clearly working hard, is able to accomplish, and turns around and is kind of in a victory mode, and Dolores shoots his hand off. And what becomes very clear on this is the man in black, who is typically kind of more of a carnage guy. He's not digging it. He's clearly not happy about how this is playing out.
Yeah, and that was, this episode did a really good job of humanizing the man in black. I mean, that's so much of what this episode was more of his story, which we did need more of because he was such the bad guy from season 1. But you knew you didn't know everything that was going on with him. And so that scene right there with that look on his face when Craddock shoots the bartender after torturing him like this, it was a really good, it was a really good scene. It was very expressive. The man in black is very expressive. So we're up to scene 9 now. We're back at Ghost Nation with the Raj lady who speaks Lakota so she can understand what they're saying, which is not typical guest behavior, y'all. So we already know there's something up with this chick, and now she can speak Lakota because clearly she's done her homework. They are marching all of the captured humans off to what they call the First of Us, and she escapes.
So I've mentioned on previous Westworld podcasts that I've become enamored with the beauty that is Chromebook and the loveliness that I can go into Google Drive, create a document, and click on voice and basically do my notes on the episode. So Mel and I watch these shows regularly, and then we kind of go back and prep for the show and rewatch it to make sure we got good notes. And so then I kind of just by voice do my notes. And I didn't realize this until we were doing the podcast. My second note is fried chicken escapes, which I'm assuming is the voice interpretation of Raj chick escapes. But fried chicken, Raj chick, I don't know. But she does escape, which is pretty awesome.
Yes, and Lesser Hemsworth, let's see. There's a quote I wrote down, and I think he's the one that says this. You live only as long as the last person who remembers you. Or maybe they said, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. One of the Lakota says that to him.
Yeah.
The end of that scene.
Which is actually the description of this episode on Amazon Prime and other things, is that particular phrase.
Yes, and I think that was actually, if you were signed up with the Twitter account for Westworld, they tweet you every Sunday before the episode goes on. I want to say, I believe that is the quote that they were sending out in that particular tweet as well. So very interesting.
Yep. So we jump back again, and now they're beating the crap out of Lawrence. Poor guy is just getting the crap beat out of him. And there's this very interesting exchange between the man in black and Craddock, where Craddock is quite full of himself and talking about death is an old amigo of mine. I know death and all these types of things. While this is kind of happening, we're getting some flashbacks to the man in black flashing back to his wife's death. And then the man in black says, death is always true. And you don't know you've been sitting across from him the whole time. And then he totally kicks ass.
Yes, it was a really good scene. Really good scene. Really tired of Craddock.
Yeah, which, I had empathy for.
Yes.
Because Dolores totally hosed him.
Yeah.
But he washed all that away.
Yeah, this episode did him in. I mean, he only had that one moment in the previous episode when Dolores betrayed them all, that you had some sympathy for him, and obviously he conned Teddy into having some sympathy for him, and Teddy lets him go just so he can go then be a total jerk in this episode, being horrible to everyone. So, yeah, he got what he deserved.
Yeah, so there's no more Craddock at this point in time. And he, and the Man in Black allows Lawrence to kind of take care of the final piece of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Craddock went after his wife with the nitro stuff too. So
Totally not cool.
Yeah, not cool. So we also had a scene with Bernard and Elsie back in the room where they heard a noise behind a door that they were trying to get open, and Bernard starts having he's having a lot of memory problems, and he's flashing to things, and he doesn't know what's going on. But they hear a noise behind a door, and that was a really short scene, and we'll find out what's behind that door later.
Really, yes. Yeah, such a short scene. I don't have any notes on that. So that was fun.
I was trying to do a better job of this episode of actually making sure I had at least all the scene cuts. But we had that little scene, and just to introduce that Bernard was having more memory glitches, and there's something scary behind a door that Bernard is acting like we shouldn't go back there. So at this point, we have no idea if there's like a freaking dragon behind that door. And I have to admit, I was hoping there was a dragon behind that door.
I am totally team Westeros World. I totally want that.
Yeah.
Crossover opportunity.
Yeah.
So you want me to take the next scene?
Scene 12.
So we're back again to the hipster apartment that Delos is in, and we're used to seeing younger William walk in, and this time it's a different person introducing, telling Delos, "Hey, you got a guest?" Mm-hmm. And older William, Man in Black William, walks in, and he starts. So they do kind of the same stuff they've been doing before, but then he starts to kind of break off and go, "Look, what's happening is." Originally we thought it was the body rejecting the mind, what was going on here, but now we're starting to think it's the mind rejecting reality. And this is the 149th time that they've done this particular execution, and it's day 35 of this particular process there. And then William goes in a little bit more and talks about, you know what, actually, you were kind of not a great guy. People weren't meant to live forever. The world's probably better off with you, Jim. Better off without you, Jim, and probably me as well. And some men are better off dead. So awesome exchange, incredible acting. I love the guy that's playing Delos does a fantastic job, and obviously, William rocks it too. So a very interesting exchange where he's basically saying, this isn't working out and you kind of suck.
Yeah, he has to tell him that Juliet, that was William's wife, Delos' daughter, killed herself, which of course he knows that what did William do to her to make her do that? And, he doesn't really answer. And then he starts calling for Logan. And we found out what happened to Logan, which I have to say I'm sad. Logan apparently OD'd many years ago. So
yeah, I would say sad, but not surprised.
No, but it's sad. And of course, the fact that he's dead doesn't mean we won't still see him.
No, that's certainly given this show, absolutely.
But yes, I hoped that Logan might come back, but who knows. So our next scene goes back to Bernard and Elsie, who are going to see what's behind the door. And it's the apartment that Delos was in. Now, what we found, I think, from the previous scene, I think they ended that with asking if they wanted to terminate him, and they said, and the Man in Black said, no, just let it play out. So our previous scene, they did not burn up the failed experiment in a fiery furnace, so he was still alive, at least at that timeline. We don't know what timeline we're talking about here. So in this scene, Bernard and Elsie go into that room. It's all black, and it is the apartment that we last saw Old Man Delos in, and it's been trashed completely. However, he's still kicking in there, but he looks like a Reaver from Firefly. He's cut his face up. He's clearly not with it. And I think the last assistant that we saw on the video screen announcing that the Man in Black was coming in appeared to be the dead man that was in the room as well. So the two are probably not too far apart in time, though we really don't have a way of knowing if it's days, weeks, how far away it is. And Bernard ends up saving Elsie, who has been acting a little unsure of Bernard's loyalties at this point. Delos attacks her, and Bernard saves her. And let's see. Elsie ends up terminating him, so she puts him out of his misery. And Bernard has an interesting memory at this point of having used some of the equipment, which is now smashed, that's in this lab, and printing a control unit. So now we're left to wonder, who was that control unit for? Because he thinks that Ford sent him to this facility to print a control unit. Now we know this facility was putting real people's minds in control units to put into host bodies. So who did Bernard print? There's our question, y'all.
Absolutely, it's the question, and it is. He talks about he printed a control unit for another human. We don't know who that is.
Yes.
And the color coding is host units are white and black, and apparently non-host units have more of a reddish hue to them from that piece there. But yeah, it was. So we get a little teaser that Bernard's printed something. We don't know who at this point in time, but future episodes may provide some light on that.
Yes. And then I think at the very end of this scene is where we find out that all of the dead people that are in this place, we have Bernard to blame for that. He whispers something to one of the drone hosts, who then proceed to kill everyone and then kill themselves. So that was freaky.
Yes, it was super was, and ultimately leaving just the one that Elsie takes out earlier in the show.
Yes. Yeah, so that was a very disturbing scene, and those flashbacks of when Bernard was in that facility. Bernard is very scary. He's very zoned out, very he's not the friendly Bernard that we know, or even the confused Bernard that we know. He is focused and scary. So Ford was definitely in control of him at that time. That's the same face we saw in season 1 when he attacked Elsie under Ford's orders. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, again, great episode. So the final scene, we get Lawrence and a bunch of Lawrence's buddies joining up with the Men in Black to kind of take off and go somewhere. It's a typical Westeros deal where you get these incredibly panoramic scenes of all the folks riding horses through the tundra as they're going forward. And as they keep kind of moving forward, eventually another rider on a horse is approaching them, a female, and they kind of come up. So this is William, Man in Black, with a bunch of folks, and then this one lady on a horse across from him, and it's Raj Girl, Fried Chicken Girl, whatever we want to call her.
And what does she say, Kelly? What does she say?
She says, "Hi, Dad."
Dun da da da.
Awesomeness.
Yes, end scene. So there we go. So when Lawrence said when the Man in Black said his daughter wouldn't mind seeing him get shot, guess what? Here she is.
There she is.
Westworld. So coolness.
Yeah, this was a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed this quite a bit.
Yeah, it really was. Even though it had no Maeve, no Felix, no Hector, sadly, or I don't know how to say this, but it didn't have Dolores in it, which actually was not a bad thing for me.
I'm okay with that.
Yes, I'm okay with that. It had mostly the Man in Black. I do like Bernard's storyline. And I really am very interested in the Man in Black story. So this was a great episode. We learned so much, but yet didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's the magic of the show, is it's moving you along in some very interesting ways, but then there's like huge amounts of unanswered stuff as well.
Yeah, the more we learn, the more we don't know or understand. So it was a great episode.
Yeah. For this season, currently my favorite. This was a very, very strong episode.
Yeah, it was good. Yep.
All right. So we will be back in future episodes to talk about episode 5 of Westworld, but I have nothing else to add for this week unless you do.
Nope. I'm looking forward to getting on through. We have 10 episodes in the season, so next time we'll be at the midway point. We'll see what we know then, but it's cool. It's fun. I still love this show.
Yep. Me as well. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
You can contact us on our website, nurtureandsupport.net, or email us at nurtandsupp@gmail.com. That's NURTANDSUPP@gmail.com. Or tweet us at nurtandsupp on Twitter.
Nurturing and supporting Tornado.